Go. Hello, everybody. I'm Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems in Austin, Texas. And today I'm joined by Ian Kentel from Outsource Marketing up in Canada, way up in Canada. Ian, is it thawing out
Way
yet?
up.
Is the snow gone?
It is a beautiful sunny day here with no snow.
Also joining me is Ken Tucker and Paul Barthel from Changescape Web in St. Charles, Missouri. Wave, Paul. Today we're going to talk about building the perfect marketing team for your business. No matter where you are in your business journey, whether you're just starting out or whether you're scaling up, you need marketing to grow. And understanding the range of skills required and your options for building the perfect team is going to be critical for your success. Even if you're a solopreneur on a shoestring budget, you'll need to cover much of what we talk about today. You're also going to want to listen carefully so you can start to think into growing your future team. So without further ado, let's jump in. Ian, our first question goes to you. What are some of the core marketing roles that must be filled across the business's marketing function?
Yeah, and great question, Jeff. And I think this is really helpful to small business owners because one of the challenges we as business owners, if we're not in the marketing world, have is, first of all, we don't understand all of the different elements that come together from a marketing perspective in order to help you attract, engage, and convert customers, right? And retain them. So I think this is really great, and I'm really interested to hear Ken talk about the next question, which is going to be the models, right? But in order to figure out the models, you have to understand what each person and each task is. So at the very top of the pyramid of what you need to do from a marketing perspective for a small business is you need to have strategy, and so the first role is a marketing strategist role. And in that role, really what they're responsible for is to consult with the business to really understand what you as the business owner wants to achieve, your goals, who your ideal customers are, what your core messaging is, what the strategies are that you're going to use in order to win at the game of marketing. So that's a really key role. And I would hazard to guess from my observation, and you guys jump in too, but that is the one role I see almost 90% of small businesses, they skip over that. They just jump right into, I want action, I want activity, I'm going to skip the strategy role because it sounds costly and it sounds like it's going to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think a lot of businesses, they get sucked into, we just got to run some ads. We're going to run some ads and everything's going to be magical. But who are you running the ads to? Where are you going to run them? What do you want to say? That's the strategy.
Yeah. And then going from there, assuming that the strategy that's developed fits the usual model of today for businesses to be successful, you need a digital marketer. So somebody that understands how to digitally get a business in front of your ideal clients. And so, the different components of that, and there's actually different specialties within the digital marketer realm, because not all digital marketers can do each of these, but some can. And usually those ones cost a lot more money to hire. But SEO, so search engine optimization, if you want to show up organically in searches for the products or services that you're selling, you need somebody that understands SEO, search engine marketing, SEM. So that's really the paid side of things. Data analytics. We talk a lot about measurement on this podcast because we know that if you don't measure something, you can't, first of all, be successful at it, but you also can't improve it over time. And you really need to be doing that in order to truly be successful. Content creation. Content has been talked about as content is king. John Jantz likes to talk about content as air. Content is fuel for all of your marketing efforts. And so if you don't have someone that's really good at creating content for your marketing efforts, they're just going to fall by the wayside. You're not going to have that fuel, that air. You're not going to have the stuff that makes all of the marketing work. And so this is things like who's developing the content strategy, and that can be the marketing strategist, or it can be at this level as well. Who's doing the blogging? Who's making sure that the blogs are SEO optimized, that they're actually topics of interest of your ideal audience? Distribution. How are you getting your content out there? It's great to, anybody that has if you build it, they will come mentality. You're going to lose at this game. You cannot do that. You have to have a distribution mindset of how are we going to get this this great content we've created in front of our ideal clients. Brand voice. What kind of consistent brand messaging and voice do you want to portray out into the marketplace that differentiates you from your competition? We talked a little bit about SEO, but if you and we talked about digital marketer at a high level, that can be a role, but then oftentimes you need a specialist. SEO is just so specialized that, again, if you want everything optimized to the max and you want your website rankings to consistently move up into the #1 position, it takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of different components there. And I'm just going to differentiate this now because this is a common oversight or a common mistake that a lot of businesses make, is that a web designer is not an SEO specialist. And in the same note, Ken looks surprised. And in the
Really?
same note, an SEO specialist is not always very good at web design, right? They're two very different. One is very scientific and one is very aesthetic and artistic, right? Both need to be driven by strategy and also, sound principles, but those need to be split apart oftentimes. Marketing analysts, like who's analyzing your data to use data to inform your business decisions, your marketing decisions. That's super important. And then who's actually leading your marketing efforts and who's doing them at a macro level. And so oftentimes you'll see marketing managers, a marketing director, a chief marketing officer, maybe even just a marketing coordinator, and then having someone above them as well. So there's lots of different roles, but somebody needs to be at the steering wheel of this thing, because one of the topics we've covered in the past is the multi-vendor mistake that a lot of businesses make, where they say, I'm going to pick you to do my social media. I'm going to pick you to do my website, another one to do my SEO, another one to do my ads, another one to do my content. And what you find with that approach is that everything just falls apart. There's no accountability. There's no overarching, consistent strategy that's in play to guide everybody. And of course, you have all these spinning plates in the air. And who's managing those spinning plates of vendors? It's you, the business owner, which you don't have time to do. So those are what I would say are some of the key roles. Then when you start to drill down, you can get into like copywriting, CRM specialists, product managers. I mean, the list can go on and on and on, but they all differ depending on the type of business you have. But hopefully that's a helpful approach. Anything I missed from your perspective?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. The main point really is there's a whole lot to think about, a whole lot of different roles going on, to market a business. I'll ask you a leading question. Now, how likely is it that somebody can find, business owner can find somebody who can do all that for them?
Yeah, and Ken's going to share models. I would say if you're thinking in-house, the chances of finding one person to do that kind of work are nil. And if you do find someone that's able to do that, they won't be effective, because to actually do all this work, you need multiple people to do it effectively. Like one person cannot do this very effectively. And even if they have the skill level, that skill level is going to cost you $100,000 plus easy, because it's such a high, you've got so much experience built into it. So you really are looking at multiple people. And yeah.
Yeah, I said it was the leading question. You're looking for a unicorn if you're trying to find one person to do it all. It's almost impossible to find. So is there any priority order for filling these roles? Do you even need all of them?
Yeah, I would say the primary one that you really need, and as I said at the beginning, if you skip this one, you're lost, right? You're just playing in a dark room trying to figure out what's going to work and throwing things against the wall trying to make them stick with no real methodology or strategy. So I think the marketing strategist role, that again, what I'm I didn't say this before, but I want it to be really clear. The marketing strategist role does not need to be a full-time role necessarily. You can bring in a consultant, you can bring in an agency, whatever it is, to do the strategy for you. And then you have different options related to the model you want to do in order to get all this work done. But without that strategist role, you will never be more successful than your competition, especially if your competition has put the effort into this part, because it is so important. I mean, we all of us on this call have gone through the duct tape marketing consulting process to understand how a marketing system can be leveraged for small businesses. And that's all of us, were sold on that idea just through reading John's book, Duct Tape Marketing, I think. And then we learned through exhaustive training, how do you take all of these disparate components and bring them into alignment? And the only way to do that is to actually have a really sound strategy that guides everything you do and tells you how to measure it, right?
Mm-hmm. Ken, Paul, anything you want to jump in on the roles?
Yeah, I mean, I'll get into this a little bit more in when I talk about the models, but you need to pick people who also align with where your ideal customers are going to be, and that needs to be a formulation of what type of team you put together and what skills they have. So from a priority perspective, you can't really say I need a social media person until you know whether or not that's the right channel where your ideal customers are sitting. So I think that's a mistake. I think most people, they naturally want to gravitate to get somebody who maybe can take the social media burden off of them. A lot of business owners, are our ages collectively. Since this is what we do, we're very comfortable doing it, but not everybody, of our generation is comfortable doing that. And even, there are even several younger people that I've been meeting lately that are not comfortable in a digital space. And so, a lot of people think, okay, the easiest thing to get rid of and the easiest thing to do and the easiest way to build leads to my business is social media. And you need to go back to the strategy, like Ian was talking about, and Jeff, you mentioned, to make sure that you're dialing in to reach your ideal customer.
Yeah. Paul, anything you want to jump in, or should we move to the
No, I'm good.
next question?
Just use AI, copy and paste. It's all good.
One thing I would add that's just in line with what Ken, you were just sharing there, was that a lot of business owners feel pressure related to whatever it is. It's social media. There's a lot of pressure because it's so visible, right? And it's so accessible that businesses feel like they have to do this. But as you were saying, one of the biggest mistakes I think business owners make is the trying to do it all themselves mentality, because what we see as consultants and digital marketing agencies doing the work is that when you do marketing successful, it's not overhead, it's investment. And man, it's going to make that phone ring. It's going to make the form fills come in. Your business is going to grow. And maybe you have a little bit of extra time now because you're not super busy. But if your marketing's working properly, you're not going to have time to do the social media, the blog writing, whatever it is that you feel like, hey, I can save a little bit now. So sustainability is so important.
Yeah. I think, as I said in the intro, even solopreneurs starting out, they may not have the budget to hire a lot of people. They may not have the budget to engage deeply with an agency. They're wearing all the hats. I mean, that's part of, unless you're a well-funded startup, part of being in startup mode is wearing a lot of hats and having to figure a lot of things out. I was in that mode. For those that don't know my background, I was in the corporate world. I ran a consulting organization. Then I switched to small business ownership. Very, very different world. I had to figure out how to market. That's how I found duct tape marketing. Fast forward to where we are today. I loved it so much. I wanted to pair it with my consulting background and become a marketing consultant and then agency owner. But as a small business owner, I had to wear all those hats, and you've got to do that. You can't do everything in the marketing world. So you got to pick and choose the priorities. But the strategy, as we all said, very, very important. And then once you know where your ideal clients are and what you want to tell them, pick and choose the right things, work your way in a little bit out of a time, and eventually you'll grow to the point where you are gonna bring on some help. So you gotta do some marketing to grow, so that you can do more marketing to grow faster, I think is it. And then the rest just kind of falls into place. Ken, I know our next question is going to go to you about different models, and I think one of the things Ian talked about a little bit was, the leadership aspect: marketing manager, marketing director, chief marketing officer. So maybe as you talk through the models, you can hit on that a little bit. So let's dig into the next one. What are some of the ways to fill these roles and get stuff done? You're running that spectrum from solopreneur ready to start bringing help on to bigger business. So what are some of the ways to fill these roles, and what are some different organizational models that businesses should consider?
Yeah. So, really there are four choices. There's an all internal team, in-house team. There's an all outsourced team. There's a hybrid, combination of those. And then there's another layer that's an emerging model that a lot of people are starting to adopt, called fractional CMO, where you bring in that one high level expert to either work with an in-house, hybrid, or outsourced operation. And it could be that person is from the outsourced operation, although they don't have to be. So Ian, when he was going through just some of the roles that you need to be thinking about, there were at least 8 that were pretty solid regular jobs that needed to be done. Are they 40-hour-a-week jobs? Not necessarily for each and every one of them. Depends on the size of your business, depends on the nature of your business, how many leads you need, what your overall budget is, obviously. But chances are, if you're trying to do this and do it well, if you're anything, there are probably thresholds for the amount of, for the size of business that you have. If you're over $1 million worth of, annual revenue in your business, then you probably can afford to have one or more people on a full-time or regular basis. If you have less than that, then, they're probably going to be drawn from other functions of other people that are in your organization. Could be the owner. It could be, the person that takes care of running your back office. It could be your project managers out there taking pictures, as they do new projects, and they've got the responsibility to post it on social media. So you got to figure out, how in the world am I going to deal with all of this? And so if you look at an in-house only team, like Ian had said before, and Jeff, you mentioned, it's really hard to find the person or a couple of people who can do all of these different things. And so, we're all big believers in omni-channel marketing. And, not every business can afford omni-channel marketing. And some businesses should not even try. You've got to be at a certain size before you could probably take that on. But an omni-channel, to me, at a minimum, I see 5 to 7 channels that you're looking at. By the time you factor in reputation, 1 or 2 socials, you've got your website, you've got to create your content. Maybe there's video elements, there's a lot right there. Those all require, ideally, those all have people who have different and unique skills. Now you factor in the cost of all of the software to run, that team. And that can be substantial. You've got, customer relationship management software. You've got graphics software. You've got video editing software. You've got SEO tools, which are not cheap, that you probably need to go buy. You've got to pay for your website hosting. You might need to even pay for some themes or plugins to make your website run the way you want it to. There's a lot there, an awful lot there, way more than anybody thinks. You need to have a quality form. That's another expenditure. Don't use a free form, on a WordPress website. You're begging for trouble. And so when you factor all those things in, you need to have a team. and that team has to be comprised of, certain basic competencies to tackle the channels you're looking at. If you're a solopreneur just getting started, you're going to have to do the marketing yourself, or you're going to have to pay somebody a little bit of money to go do it for you. Chances are the best investment for you at that level is, to get somebody who can go to a business networking event or group on a regular basis, and build word of mouth referrals, and get reviews. Those are the low hanging fruit that either a business owner or a solopreneur can probably start with pretty easily, pretty naturally. Now, depending on the nature of your business, it may be highly social. And so, if you're creating a bakery, people want to see the pictures of the cookies and the pastries and the pies and the cakes and all that stuff, cupcakes that you're creating, right?
Oh man, I'm getting hungry now, Ken.
Yeah.
Make me hungry.
So you need to factor that in, and maybe the owner, they're pretty good at doing that, and maybe they can tackle that on, and maybe that's a good channel for them. But once you get beyond that, if you're trying to really grow a business that you can either sell or transition, to a family member or whatever your master plan is, you're going to need to have a team. And so, the downside to in-house is that you're probably going to get people who are competent at doing some things. Like maybe they could write a blog post, but can they write an SEO blog post? Can they write a blog post that's really engaging to the user and not just something that is a statement from the business? Because the user experience is very important. It's a factor for SEO, and it's also a factor for people wanting to stay on your website and keep coming back to your website. So just because you can write a good article and you're competent in English does not mean that you're an SEO copywriter. So that's an extra set of skills, and so you're either going to have to pay to get that person trained, or you're going to have to hire them with that training and the experience that they already come with. So there are just a ton of hidden costs and internal. And I think really, most businesses probably need to be multi-million dollars before they really think about having a true team, before they can afford to have a true team to do all of the right things from a marketing perspective. The nice thing about having your own team is, hopefully they're better plugged into the organization. There are certain things that are a lot easier to do when you're working inside of an organization than when you're external to it. For example, capturing stories about what's happening with the business, and because that can turn into so much great content. It could be done by video, it could be done by social media posts, whatever. But if you're not there on a daily basis, or ever, that's really hard to capture, right? So there's challenges there. You can also get a team to operate maybe in a more cohesive structure. I'm going to jump to the model that I see, unfortunately, isn't too common next, which is that people, they hire a web developer, they hire a social media person, the business owner does this, that, or the other, and then they get frustrated because their marketing isn't working. And I'm here to tell you, we're in challenging economic times, and a lot of marketing companies don't work well together. I'll just be flat out honest. The majority of marketing companies that I've come across, where I don't know the partners in a trusted network like the Duct Tape Marketing Network or the Ignite Mastermind or other programs that I'm involved in, everybody wants their own slice of the pie, and they want it to be as big as possible. So whether consciously or not, I think there's some element of either sabotage or holding back or prevention of success, because while you never want to see somebody failed outright necessarily, some businesses want, some marketing consultants are going to say, or web designers or whatever, I kind of want this person to fail so I can take that job over. And that's not a healthy situation. And if you don't have a person in place to manage that and tightly control that and make sure that everybody is marching, lock, stock, and barrel, you're going to run into trouble eventually. And
so Ken, just to be clear, you're
Yeah.
talking about essentially an outsource model, but outsourcing with multiple vendors, each with different pieces.
And
right?
and it could be even an outsourced hybrid, because with an internal person as well.
Mm-hmm. I will directly support what you said about the multiple vendors don't necessarily work well together. And I'd even say it's not necessarily that it's intentional sabotage or
Exactly.
intentional.
Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not.
Sometimes it's just philosophical differences.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own biases of the way they would do something, and then
Yeah.
the business owner winds up getting conflicting advice. And
Yeah.
instead of going from I'm going to work with 3 different people, I'm going to get 3 times as much great information, they wind up getting 1/3 that's common, and all the rest is conflicting. And then how do they know how to sort it out? So I've directly seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just take, I'm in both StoryBrand and also duct tape marketing. And with duct tape, we always look at, kind of this omni-channel strategy driven approach where your marketing is done across multiple channels. StoryBrand has a lot of people who they're great at building gorgeous websites. They may be really good at building clear messages to put on those websites. They might even be really good at building sales funnels, which is all a part of the core of what StoryBrand teaches. But they're not going to play well when somebody comes from an SEO perspective and says, well, that's a beautiful website. It takes 5 minutes to load because the pictures are too big, or you've got 20 videos on the page. Why are you doing this? And so there's going to be some clashing based on the programs and the experience that people bring to the table. So you've got to have somebody who is the arbitrator and the manager and the director to keep everybody in line. And this is where the fractional CMO role is coming into play more and more. When you have a bigger organization where you have multiple players, either within a team or a hybrid, internal, external, multiple contractor kind of a team, a fractional CMO maybe is super important because they're the person who you can assign the responsibility, to make sure that everything's done right. But they have to have certain authority. I mean, they have to have the ability to hire or fire or coach or, get training or reassign. Because if they don't, you're rendering them basically ineffective. It may not be firing somebody, but it maybe is you need to shift them over to do something that's better suited for them, or get them training and be prepared to go make that investment. The outsourced model, I think, in my mind, the best way to do this is to outsource it to a single company. I'll admit I'm biased, but the reason is because you're going to get your tightest integration with an execution team if it's coming from a single outsourced company. Now, the downside is, did you pick the right company? There's a huge risk there, no doubt about it. If you pick the wrong company and they wind up taking your Google ads and running them on their accounts, not yours. If they do certain things, where they basically take ownership and control over certain assets that aren't transferable back to you, you could be screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they just flat out fundamentally have the wrong set of tactics that they're trying to do, because they're still ultimately vendor driven, and tool based driven. That can be a real problem and a real risk. So I think you want to look for, somebody who has, our biggest competitors a lot of times are companies that are national in scale. They're often media companies. They have economies of scale where they say, we can do X number of social media posts and we do this and we can do that. And they have a comprehensive, nice sounding solution. And guess what? They have a gorgeous reporting dashboard that just seduces people to think, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for. But if it's pulling in all of the most irrelevant information onto that dashboard and it's fundamentally not the right things, what good does that sexy, gorgeous dashboard do you? Drives me nuts when people make decisions based on beauty. Marketing has got to be, I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox, but marketing's got to be a combination of technical prowess, which seriously lacks. Most marketing companies suck. They don't even think about technical prowess and IT interface. Then you've got to have deep project management skills because this is complex. You got multiple plates spinning. Ideally, you can get them spinning at the same time so that maybe you can get some uplift and some amplification. That's really where it's ideal. You got to have the creative, it's got to be that right mesh of all of those things. And again, that comes and it begs the question about, can you afford to hire an internal team that has all of those, the technical, the creative, the project management, maybe even the financial oversight aspects, is another factor to kick in. So it's a complicated world. I'm a big believer in bootstrapping. I had to bootstrap myself, Jeff. I'm sure you did, Ian. I know you had to as well. You have, as an owner, or even if you have employees, sometimes you have to suck it up and you have to do some of these things on your own. But you need to start to identify, what can I get off my plate? Because what's ultimately holding me back? Where do I need to hire talent and bring it in, whether it's outsourced, from an external company or contractor, whether it's bringing somebody in-house, and then you have to develop a plan and it has to be aligned with what you're trying to accomplish with your overall business strategy. Yeah. I don't know if I hit everything you wanted me to, but
you hit on a lot. Let's Ian or Paul, do you want to jump in? I've got to follow up, but let's give Ian and Paul a shot here.
I was just going to say that, there is no perfect model, right? We because of how rigorous we all are in what we do, from strategy to implementation to reporting to, recommendations to take your business to the next level. Not every agency is like that. So as Ken was saying, you can choose really badly there. In-house, you can choose really badly there as well. Just a quick anecdote. I did an audit for a business, a digital marketing audit, a few years ago for a business, multi-million-dollar business. They were outsourcing all of their stuff, but they decided to outsource it to like the YP, the yellow pages for their media buys and a whole bunch of things, right? And so they were overpaying dramatically and not getting good results. So their decision was actually to bring in an in-house, CMO who had no digital marketing experience, unfortunately, but a really good guy. But they brought him in as the CMO in order to develop the strategy with the help of a consultant, but then the implementation, oversee all of the spinning plates, all of the different vendors. In my view, that was a really bad decision because, and some of the results, bear this out. But now that some time has passed, you can see them. But like, you have to be very careful about who you let into your house. And I think, just as I was preparing for this talk today, one of the things that I think we should do in another topic, another podcast, is talk about, and I think we've done this a long time ago, but I'd like to do it again. And that's talk about how to choose the best digital agency for your business. So what kind of criteria and what kind of questions should you be asking? Because again, I think it's the better model if you can afford it. And quite frankly, it's a lot cheaper than buying, $100,000 plus CMO who doesn't know how to do stuff. And then you're holding like the cost of opportunity to your business, because it took him almost a year to get that business aligned right? So you need to be very thoughtful about this and hire
opportunity cost is a big deal.
Yeah, opportunity cost is massive. Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. A lot of potential clients that I talk to have been, they're gun shy because they've been burned in the past. Yeah. They had spent a lot of money and not gotten a lot of results out of it. Therefore, they're hesitant to even be talking to anyone else about spending more money.
Yeah, and so when if you do find yourself in that situation, I think it's perfectly acceptable to hire somebody who can demonstrate that they are knowledgeable about the type of marketing solutions that you need, and that can align with the strategy that you have to implement, and have them vet whatever resources you're going to bring in, whether it's the outsourced vendor, or whether it's hiring people in-house. And that can be borderline fractional CMO, or it could just be bringing somebody in place to get that plan in place, to get the team in place, and then they transition out and they go do what they do. Maybe they periodically check in and make sure everything's still aligned. But there are people who are out there who do that. I mean, Jeff, you come from an IT-ish kind of a background, I think, a little bit. And, it's really very common to do a tool selection process where you bring in tools, you look at them, you see, what are the pros and the cons of each of the tools, and how do they interface or work with other tools. You can do that with people as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a vendor selection process.
Yeah, since our question is on the models, we hit on the fractional CMO model and the consultant a little bit. I think in my mind, consultants are going to be shorter term. You might have a consultant come in and work with you on strategy and then hand off a plan that you go execute, whether in-house or you take to an outsourced agency or whatever. What a fractional CMO is going to do a lot of that high level strategic thinking, but then they're going to be longer term doing the management, doing the day-to-day, working with an in-house team, potentially hiring the in-house team at the appropriate time, potentially managing the relationship with an outsourced team or agency. I also think the agency model, the outsource model, one of the benefits in the way I position our agency is we're talent brokers, right? As a business owner, do you have the skills to hire a graphics designer, a writer, a technical, website specialist, or do you just want to essentially go to staffing service who can do that for you and then, continue to own and manage the relationship and with all the different players, in the form of a one-stop shopping, agency model, outsource model.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
if I can add one more option to that list of models, this is one I've observed recently, especially in the contractor space, and it's because of some of the contractor coaching groups that contractors are in. I've seen where a lot of them are bringing it in-house, but they're using overseas labor to do social posting, blog posting, different elements. And man, like I have seen some train wrecks from several of these contractors where their stuff has typos all over it. Their stuff is really poor. Yes, it's at least getting done. Like, good job, you're getting activity done, but it's not strategic activity. And now, just like with the in-house model, you as the business owner are now the manager of those people, and you have to give them oversight and direction. And just as you were saying, if you're not skilled in that, if you don't have the talent or the expertise and education, how are you going to guide these people to do it well? Yes, they'll do the activity consistently, but man, that's a kind of a different model I've seen that's growing really fast because of AI, I think, is a big part of that, but also the cheapness of some overseas labor. I don't know. Have you guys seen that a lot in some of your worlds?
Not necessarily. I mean, not attributable directly to overseas labor or anything. I mean, it's really just the fact that there's nobody who can oversee the execution, through a consistent set of processes to achieve, a specific desired set of results. Another thing that we have as an outsourced option is we have an economy of scale. And, on the initially you're like, okay, well, I need 6 people. If I bring them in house, I need 6 people if I hire you. And it's like, no, not necessarily, because we have economies of scale. One, we do this all the time. This is our job. So we're hopefully considerably more proficient. 2, we've got a common set of tools that we've been using that we can leverage and share across multiple clients, which drives the tool cost down per implementation of a client substantially. So our tool costs are not anywhere near what a tool cost would be for just a single organization to create the equivalent tool set. So there are a lot of things that are benefits there. I think you also, if you hire the right outsourced company, they have their own little micro fractional CMO running that team,
Yeah.
And is it a full-blown CMO level function? Maybe not. It doesn't always need to be there. Sometimes it absolutely needs to be there. But those are things that I think are really important. The last thing I want to say is, we come at this with a specific approach, which I think makes a hell of a lot of sense. And that is, do a strategy engagement first, or a total online presence audit, or a digital audit, whatever you're going to call it. And that company, that's a try, right? We talk about know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. It's a try for both parties. It gives us the opportunity to say, you know what, we're not going to be the best company to support you. And a good, honest marketing company is going to tell you that. And then hopefully they'll try to help you find, give you ideas on how to go find the right company for what you're trying to accomplish. It also gives our customers an opportunity to say, I see how these guys work. I see what they're proposing. I completely understand. I've got my strategy. I've got a baseline of where I'm at, where I probably need to try to go. And having that try strategy, a paid try strategy with an initial engagement that gives both parties the ability to opt out, to help. It just helps, pave a better path to success.
Mm-hmm. Paul, you want to jump in, or should we move on to the next question, which is yours? So you're up next anyway.
Now, the only thing I'd say really is I think one of the biggest reasons, not the only reason, that these things are so price driven is because whether it's a startup or an existing business, marketing is almost always an afterthought. It's never built into the budget. And so when someone comes along and says you need to do this or this or this, it's like, well, I don't have the money for that. It's like, well, maybe that's because you didn't budget for it in the first place.
Yeah, marketing. Marketing is too often treated as a commodity instead of an investment. And it should be an investment, and it potentially is the thing that can rock your world the most if you do it right as a business owner, if you get it dialed in right.
Yeah, what I see a lot of, what I was going to say is, there's that, well, we need you to help us grow so we can afford you. It's like, well, wait a minute, how's that going to work? It needs to be. John Jantz talks a lot about marketing as a critical system in your business, and that's what it needs to be. It needs to be something that you invest in. It needs to be something that you plan ahead for, and that's why I said at the top, even as a solopreneur, thinking into what your marketing team looks like down the road is going to help get you there. But even as a solopreneur, you're maybe not putting as much money into it. I mean, you are in the form of ads, in the form of tools, but you're not paying people, but it's your time, and there's the opportunity cost again, right? And then at some point you grow big enough to where you start putting the money into it, but you've got to think ahead. You can't think behind. In other words, say, well, I did, $250,000 worth of business all on my own last year. I can now afford to take, 5 or 10% of that and spend it in marketing. You've got to think of what's it going to take me to get to the next level. And it's an investment. It's like when you want to retire, you don't go, well, I only have, $20,000, I guess maybe I can retire down the road on that. No, you've got to think ahead. When I retire, I need, how many $100,000, how many $1 million in the bank, and what's it going to take to get there, and then plan and budget accordingly. Maybe before we jump to the next question, there's one more side thought. Is there, of these different models we've been talking about, different teams, are there any levels or sizes of businesses that you want to throw out that it makes sense to be considering as different transition points through this spectrum?
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought I already kind of talked about that. I mean, you need to be a multi-million-dollar business if you're going to bring in a robust in-house team.
Yeah, I would say maybe even 5 million to truly be there. And then you can start working into it, though. So I guess it's where the inflection points of when you, like, when would you say you graduate from solopreneur to talking to, outsourcers or trying to make that first hire or whatever? I mean, I guess that's kind of where I'm going. What are those general ranges of where things make sense?
I think that's impossible to say because it's tied to the nature of your business. I mean, if you're running a food truck, where your margins are very low, and your time is taken up because you're doing a bunch of different things, you're going to have to just suck it up and take that on yourself. And you're going to have a lot of money before you can really start to hire out for any type of marketing support or service. If you're a guy that cleans gutters and you make typically $2,000 per job, because not cleaning but installing gutters, while you're doing that, you're starting to get a little bit more profit margin. And so then your question is, can I sustain my business growth to the point where I can afford to hire another person to do what I'm doing so that there are two of us so that we can get more money coming in? Or do I hire somebody to do my marketing? And it's, I think it's so different for every business and the nature of their business. And just the core competency of the person who owns the business. Some people are going to be very astute. Look, I've talked to painters who are just, they're natives at using social media to grow their business really well, and they can afford to leverage that channel. They are by far the exception rather than the norm. But there are people who do that, and they can build a nice, healthy little business where it's not just them, and that's what they do. There are other people who couldn't get anything off the ground if they tried from a marketing perspective, because they just don't have the skills. They don't know where to start. The number of choices are just overwhelming. Do you invest in Google Ads? Do you do social media? Do you build a website? Do you send out postcards? What are you going to do? If you don't have that prior knowledge and experience, you're gonna be overwhelmed by the choices. And so I don't think there is an easy answer for that, other than, when you're looking at, you got to be, typically, minimum of $500,000 to $750,000 to hire a decent chunk of an outsourced marketing team. It's probably your best effective approach. $1 million or more, you can hire a better outsourced team. Multi-million-dollar, maybe 5 million and higher, you can probably afford to hire an in-house team, and maybe even, get one of those people could be the person that runs that team.
Yeah. I'll qualify. You said at you can hire a better outsourced team. I would say just maybe a more comprehensive, because you want to hire the best you can to begin with. But it's
well, sure, yeah. You
can have them do a little more for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I can make a bold statement in the dental world, to me, just because I know that world so well, is I would say any dentist from startup to 30 years in the market absolutely should hire a strong strategy first dental marketing agency day one. Actually, day one minus 60, because you never want to be the marketer in your dental agency. You want to be doing chair time with patients. And if you really want to actually compete in your marketplace, because the truth is most communities, from small communities to large metropolitan communities, have tons and tons of dentists. I live in a small town. We have 23 dentists. right? Like, like it's a highly competitive marketplace. And the only way you can win to get visibility, attraction, engagement, conversion, and retention, yes, you have to do your job really, really well in this world. And I think this is true in a lot of professions. But man, the only way to position your well is you position yourself for success is to get somebody to do it well right off the bat.
Well said.
I know that's not true in every industry, but in the dental world, that you have to.
I think it is in a lot of businesses. I mean, the failure rate of businesses is very high. And I think one of the reasons is that they, as a business owner, classic example, they Ken used it earlier, the bakery, right? They bake a great pie, they bake a great cake, a good batch of cookies, but they don't know all the other things they need to know. And if they don't dig in and get some help, then they don't have all the things they need to grow. So in the interest of time, let me move on now to Paul. You've been pretty quiet, so we're going to get you talking. Let's talk about what business owners should do to set up their marketing teams, whatever the form is. But let's what should they do to set up their marketing teams for success? What tips do you have?
Yeah, like I said, we're 50 minutes in, but this should be relatively short because it's really not that much different than hiring any other employee when you think about it. So you have recruitment, training, the environment they're going to work in, and measurement and KPIs. So that one may be a little different because there's a lot of job functions that you don't necessarily have to, other than employee performance, you don't really have to measure anything. So define the job, whatever platform you're using, and use different platforms, use social media, use professional networks, industry specific job boards, don't depend on one platform, but clearly define the job and the responsibilities and the skill sets, because that's going to help weed out a lot of people. Maybe some people, they'll just apply for a job regardless. It's like, oh, they're hiring, I'm going to apply, even though I don't have the skill set to fulfill that, but it can help. Interviews, do thorough interviews, and background checks, check references. And I think Ken alluded to this earlier. Do they fit your company? Because there is a cultural fit, if you will, that you have to take into consideration. And I think the biggest thing there is it's not just the cultural fit, like I said earlier, it's the skill set and the experience, because they may be a great cultural fit, but if they don't have the skill set and the experience, then that's going to be a problem. And before you go and hire someone, look internally. Do you have internal talent that maybe you have an underutilized employee, and they may have a skill set that can do what you need to do, because you may not need a full-time employee. Maybe what you need to be done is 10 hours a week, and you may already have someone internally that can do that. So don't ignore that. And then training. This is one thing I've noticed with small businesses, is that they hire someone and then they just say, okay, here's your job, go do it. And they don't have any kind of onboarding, if you will. They don't have any kind of training or mentorship program. And a lot of times you may hire someone that has the skill set to do the job at a basic level, but you can offer them ongoing training, and maybe courses or whatever it is. You can offer them ongoing training to increase that skill set and make them an even more valuable team member than they already are. Performance reviews, I mentioned that. Certifications, having them, this goes back to the ongoing training, but professional certifications and development courses that they can take, and maybe use the employee or employer will pay for that. But again, that's actually going to go to employee retention. It's going to help you retain employees because you're, or at least hopefully it will, because you're helping them develop their skill set and becoming a more valuable member of your team. And that's not just new employees, that people that have been with you for a while. And again, I've seen this in small businesses that the owner, okay, this person has been with me for 10 years and this is what they do, but they don't stop and say, well, does this person have a skill set beyond what they do? Do they have an interest in expanding and moving up, or even making a lateral move within the company to do something different? And that's something that a lot of times is overlooked.
I think there's a good point there. As a former, manager in the corporate world, I've seen, and in businesses, I've seen people say, I don't want to train them to be really good because then they're going to leave and go to my competitors, and I will have trained them for competing against me. And it's
well,
just
they
the
may
opposite.
do
I
that
think,
anyway if you
yeah,
don't
if you
train them.
stagnate them, if you don't train them and develop them, then they're probably going to get unhappy and jump. So train them, develop them, make sure they maintain a great work environment. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and the environment, create a collaborative environment. And because a lot of times what you see is, you see these silos. You have the marketing and you have the technology and you have the sales, and no one communicates. Okay, so you have to create that environment, because if the marketing team doesn't know what the sales team is doing and vice versa, you're probably going to create problems internally. And so don't allow those silos to be developed. Encourage that collaborative communication. And if you're the business owner, keep in mind that you're the business owner. We had a client a few years back that they couldn't get their employees to take, basically their employees told the business owner, we're not going to take pictures of these projects. And the person, Ken, you know who I'm talking about, and we were working with another consultant. It was actually their client. And he said, look, is the dog wagging the tail, or is the tail wagging the dog? Okay, you are the business owner. And if they aren't going to do what you need them to do, then you fire their ass and you go hire someone else. And and he said that exactly to them. It's like, this person doesn't mince words, but he's absolutely correct. If you as a business owner say, look, you're as the project manager or whatever role it is, your job is to take these before and after pictures. And if you're not going to do that, you're gone, and I'll hire someone that will do that. And sometimes, unfortunately, that's the approach you have to take. And again, measurement and KPIs, set clear goals, know what you want to measure it and why you want to measure it. And, everything is data driven these days, and it's digital. And if it's digital, it can be measured. And everyone on your team needs to understand the why and the how of that, and why it's important. And you have to revisit that on a regular basis and adjust the KPIs. And going back to what I said about what you're measuring and why, one of the things with analytics is conversions on a website is a good example, I think. Is that, what's a conversion? If you're trying to get newsletter signups, if someone subscribes to your newsletter, but they don't necessarily buy anything, that's still a conversion, because that was your goal. Now, ultimately, the goal is for them to purchase something from you, but that may be the first step, is getting a newsletter sign up, getting some kind of engagement. And so know what your conversions are, and how to move on. We talk about this sales funnel. Okay, they signed up for the newsletter. So now, how do we move them to that next step? How do we move them towards a purchase? And that's the whole nurture sequence. And your marketing team needs to understand that. They need to understand the buyer journey. They need to understand that it's not linear, that it's convoluted. They need to understand that there can be as much as 17, 18 touch points, depending on your product or service, before they actually purchase. So, and you have to measure these things. And that's, I guess, in the interest of time, I'll shut up. But that is, I mean, I just think those are some really important things to understand.
So these kind of sound like the things that you do when you're hiring an employee, but do they apply as well to if you're, outsourcing or talking to an agency, for instance?
Well, hopefully, if you're talking to an agency that doesn't understand these things, you need to go talk to someone else. But those are questions that you should ask the agency that you're looking to hire, definitely. So, and if they can't answer those questions, then you probably don't want to hire that agency.
Yeah, I agree. I think with the exception maybe of training and development, all the things you talked about are, treat the agency as a person. You're interviewing them. You're, like Ken said earlier.
Yeah, it may not be a direct employee, but yeah, it may not be a direct employee, but they're a contractor. You're still, and you're hiring them for their supposed expertise.
Yeah. And so, what does the environment look like working back and forth? How will you communicate? How is success going to be measured? I think all these are good things, and you're on the money.
Here's one of the biggest differences, I think, too, is that an agency worth its salt is going to come to you, and they already know, especially if they know your industry, they already know what KPIs are most important to you as a business, what key goals you're trying to achieve, because most painters are trying to achieve the same goal. Most dentists are trying to achieve their own same goal of, filling seats and revenue and that kind of stuff. And so I think what's different when you hire someone in-house, you have to make the key KPIs. You have to be more expert than the person you're hiring because you need to guide and direct their efforts. And so I think that to a lot of business owners is really hard to do because they don't have time to do that, right? They don't have time to do the work themselves. But unless you want things to run amok, you're going to have a real challenge knowing how to direct that person. Mm-hmm. Whereas again, an agency, they'll come with the plan, they'll come with the strategy, they'll come with, they will listen. If they're a good agency, they will set you up for success in how the relationship will work. But you will feel like you're hopping on a bus that's taking you to the promised land you want to go to, instead of trying to I'm going to put together the car myself, and then I'm going to have to drive this car, right? It's a very different mindset.
Or put together the car while you're driving it.
It's true. It's true.
Hey, it looks like we lost Ken. I think we're at the hour anyway.
He had an appointment that he needed to get to, I believe.
Is there anything either of you want to add, or we're not? If not, we're in a good place to wrap up. And Ian, you can take us out. But going once, going twice for either of you, and then over to Ian.
I would just say, be very thoughtful. Look at the models that you have available to you. Hire a marketing consultant, right? Like we talked about that role of strategy, because whether you're going to take on the strategy yourself as a business owner, or you're going to hand it off to people within your organization or outside of your organization, that's still a critical role. And again, some marketing agencies can do that strategy role. You talked about how you can pay for the strategy and then have others do it. Without that part, though, you're not going to be moving as fast to your goals as you want to be. So I just encourage people, think it through, pay for an audit, pay for an initial strategy consultation, and then start down the path to success. All right, so I'll close this off. Thank you to our listeners and viewers for joining us today. We do this because of you guys. So if you get value from it, spread the word, please. And also pop us a note if you have a particular topic that you want us to talk about. And until next week, folks, keep calm and mark it on.
Thanks, everyone. See you.